Hi everyone, I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I am going to be making a bracelet today with some of our exclusive products, being the DiscDuo and the RounDuo bead. It's fun to get to sit down and play with some of these beads after not playing with them for a while. And we're going to be featuring the DiscDuo in this buried treasure bracelet. Kind of has X's on the top, so we're going to play that up. In addition to the DiscDuo and the RounDuo beads, I'm going to use a variety of other seed beads as well to kind of highlight those items. If you need any of the materials for this buried treasure bracelet, on the left-hand side here, we'll drop down a little list of the different materials you can click on and get to those products online if you do need to purchase from our website. Also, you can look at those material lists, take it to your local Potomac Bead Company, and shop for the items there as well. For the hidden treasure bracelet, you're going to want some thread and some needles to string the whole thing together. I'm going to be using white Wildfire beading thread in 0.006, and I'm using size 11 tulip needles. This is a double needle or a 2-needle project, so you will need to string 2 of them on a 5-foot piece of beading thread. In addition to my thread and needles, the other tools that I have sitting handy are my thread burner, which is the Wildfire cord cutter thread burner that I'm using. I have a bent nose pliers to flatten out my thread in order to make it easier to thread my needles. And if you like and you're a person that glues, you can also have some super new glue to work with that as well. I am working on a bead on it board, and it gives a nice easy surface to work on. And other than that, we get to get into our beads. So I'm going to create the bracelet on a base, I'll flip it over here, of my DiscDuos and my RounDuo beads. In the example here, I have the jade and the Aztec gold for the colors. I'm going to be switching it up and doing purple and zinc. So I have this crystal, or the white Lila Vega luster. These are brand new DiscDuos that we just got in. And I'm using the zinc iris RounDuo beads to go with that. In addition to the DiscDuo and the RounDuo, I'm using a couple other check finish seed beads, which these are Miyuki seed beads that are coated and colored in the Czech Republic. So this is a Miyuki 15-0, and I'm using 2 different colors of 15-0s just to kind of highlight the colors that I'm working with. I'm using a jet bronze color, and it has that nice almost purpley bronze look to it. And then I'm also using the same color of the DiscDuos in the 15-0s in that white Lila Vega luster. And I'm just going to use a couple of those to highlight the purple throughout the bracelet and brighten it up a little bit. Most of my bright color and the light is going to come from my bugles here. These are a 3mm bugle that I'll be working with, and those I'll be working in at the end. These are a silver lined crystal bugle. And I'm also going to be making it brighter with 2 different delica beads. The delica beads that I've chosen are the opaque pale rose AB, which is 1504 if you're looking for the delica number. And then also the Duracoat galvanized silver 1831. I'll be using those 2 colors. To close it all off on my original sample, I have a cup button. I'm going to jazz it up and make it a little bit shinier on my version that we're doing here with one of the PC, the Potomac Crystal faceted buttons in the Crystal Lab color. So it really sparkles and has that great shine to it. To get started, I want you to take your size 10, 11, or 12 needles, whichever size you prefer to work with, and you're going to thread a 5-foot piece of thread with a needle on each end. Initially, to start, we're going to be working with our 11-0, our delica here. I'm going to be working with the silver color, my DiscDuo and my RounDuo, and then also my darker 15-0 color. Make yourself little piles and get ready to go. So to get started here on the buried treasure, we're going to start with our button actually. The nice thing with the 2-needle project is that you get to get started and add your clasps or your loop right at the end. If you are using a metal clasp, I would suggest using some wire protectors rather than going right onto the metal. So that's another idea if you are started there. I have the project here, and I'm going to flip over to the back side of it so that way you can actually see what's going on. I did not finish the example completely so you could see the openings, because by the time you finish it, there's a lot going on. This does have 4 passes up and back, so you'll have an opportunity to reinforce those clasps as well. The faceted button does have 4 holes. I'm just going to be ignoring 2 of them. So I like the way that it sits when it only goes through 2 holes. I'm going to go through 2 holes, and I'm going to go through on a diagonal. I'm putting out just a couple of my little purple beads because I am going to use them in my clasp. Other than that, again, I have my piles of my darker 15s, which I just made bigger than I thought I was going to, and some of my delica beads. To start out, we have our needles on our thread, and I'm going to thread on 4 of my 15-0s in that purple color. I'm going to drop those down to the bottom of my thread, and then I'm going to put on my button. I'm going to put it on the button again through the diagonal holes, so one on one corner, one on the other. My needle is going through the crystal side, coming out on the back side of that Labrador. Take that down evenly to the bottom of your thread, and it's going to sit right on the bottom of those 2 even pieces of thread. For the first pass, as we're working with it, we're going to start out by actually just adding a DiscDuo and then the RounDuos on either side in a very simple pattern. To get to that starting point, we're going to add 3 of our 15-0s on each needle, so 1 on the right, 1 on the left. Usually projects that I do with 2 needles are going to mimic one another. That means anything that's on the right hand side is also going to be done on the left hand side, so it's going to be a mirror effect. I'm going to put on one of my delica beads next, and I'm going to crisscross through this. One needle is going to be going in from the right out towards the left, and we're going to switch the opposite direction with one needle going from the left coming out the right. You want to pull evenly, and after this you want to make sure, because it is a lot of thread, and yes, you will use all of that thread, you want to make sure that you're still in the middle of your thread there. That little V is going to create a nice base for you to be able to get on and off the button pretty easily. After the button, we're going to start our actual pattern. So the pattern on both the right and the left needle is always going to be the same. It's going to be a 15, then a delica, then a 15. On goes our DiscDuo on the right needle, and then we're going to do it on the left needle as well. So I'm going to put that needle down, pick up my other needle, and you can see I'm just kind of poking it into my bead mat. The bead on a board has a nice kind of cushion level that you can poke into it really easily. Do the same thing with the other needle, 15, delica 15, and then I'm going to go through that same DiscDuo. I'm going to go through the hole on the other side. So one needle goes through the hole on the left, one needle goes through the hole on the right. Pulling my thread through then, and when I get done, you're going to have that nice little V effect. And then that creates an X when you look back to the clasp. After that, we're going to continue with that pattern of 15, delica 15. So it's going to be 15, delica 15, a DiscDuo or a RounDuo, and then the same pattern, 15, 11, 15. The reason I'm using the delicas are because they have a nice big hole, and we're going to be passing back through a fair amount. I'm going to pick up the needle on the other side, do the same thing. Get some of those out of the way here so you can see. We have the 15, delica 15. Then I pick up my RounDuo, repeat my pattern, and then the next thing we're going to do is add another DiscDuo. So the RounDuos are going to sit independently on each of my needles. The DiscDuos are going to share. So we're going to be going through both holes of the DiscDuo on this first round. The RounDuo for this first pass, we're only going through one hole of them. So they're just going to kind of hang out on the side. Once we push that down, you're going to see that pattern complete. And literally you're just going to repeat that using all of your DiscDuo beads. For your DiscDuo, if you want it to be an average size, a 7-inch wrist, you're going to use about 11 of the DiscDuos and 20 of the RounDuos. I'm going to go the whole length of the bracelet, adding in that pattern there of the 15, 11, 15, RounDuo, 15, 11, 15, DiscDuo, the whole way up the line, making sure that when you're doing it, that you're going to have this Xing effect kind of go on here, where it has the 2 brought back to 1 and continuing on. Just to show you the method that I'm using to get this all done, while I have one needle in my hand, so I held this whole side here with my right hand and did my right needle. Now I'm going back onto that pattern of just every other RounDuo, DiscDuo, RounDuo, and adding in the second side. So I'm adding in my pattern here of my RounDuos, and then I'm linking on to the DiscDuo that's already on the previous side. I'm a lot faster stringing with my right needle and working because I'm right-handed, so if you continue to do this, it's going to be quicker for you to build your base than to constantly hold on to 2 needles. So this is just a little tip for you that you can add your little pattern there and then share and go through the next DiscDuo. I don't do the whole thing. I usually will go about halfway or a couple inches and then push everything down so I make sure that I haven't missed anything as I progress in the bracelet rather than stringing one whole side and then the other whole side. Now I'll pick up and I'll add some more to one needle and then go back and switch hands and work with the other needle. I've added my 11 of my DiscDuo beads, and now we're going to create the loop in order to hold our button end. If you're doing a faceted button like I'm doing, it's going to be a couple more beads, about 4 more beads than if you are doing a cup button, so you want to keep that in mind. And I'm going to do my loop with the delica beads. It's going to be very simple. When I'm coming out of my DiscDuo bead here, I am going to add on just one of my needles, doesn't matter if it's the right needle or the left needle, I'm going to add one of my bronze 15s and then a bunch of my delicas, about 28 altogether. Once I have those on my thread or on my needle, I'll let them drop down to my project. And to finish it off, I'm going to add one more 15 in that same color. I'm going to stabilize it by going through the opposite side. So this one here is that bead, that thread coming out on the left. I'm going to come down the DiscDuo on the right hand side. And pull that nice and tight. I'm going to go ahead back now and just check, make sure that my loop is sufficient enough to put my cup button or my button through, which is pretty perfect. I'm going to let that thread that I've just put through that DiscDuo sit and hang out there. And I'm going to pick up the other thread that was just sitting poked in my bead mat and reinforce that loop by going back through all of those beads that I just added. Once I go back through all the beads, I pass through the DiscDuo on the opposite side. That's going to bring a needle and thread out, one on each side of that DiscDuo. And it creates your first little loop. If you want to, as we go back through and do more passes, I'll describe how you can use a peyote stitch along the actual edge of the button clasp if you would like. Right now what we're going to do is get ready to create our little X's here for our buried treasure. So we're going to create the X's that sit right on top of the DiscDuo. And we're also going to create a bridge and get to that second hole that's still available and open of the RounDuo bead. The important number to keep track here while we're working is that you want to do 3. So we're going to keep in mind the number 3. We're going to be using 3 beads to connect to each of our RounDuos here. 3 beads are going to connect to the RounDuo, and then we're also going to use sets of 3 to crisscross right above our DiscDuo. For the DiscDuo, we're going to be crisscrossing with a delica bead, and I'm using my silver color for that. That's going to sit right in the middle here, and we're going to do that same diagonal stitch, 1 needle right, 1 needle left. They're going to be with the 15 O's in that bronze color sitting right on top of the DiscDuo. On the side here, when I'm working on it, what I'm going to be doing is adding the 3 beads on the side of the RounDuo bead. Those 3 beads that I add on the side of the RounDuo bead are going to be my lighter purple color. So to get started, just as a reference, I did keep the empty last bead. I went back and forth with adding the X on it, and I think I am going to keep it empty rather than keeping the X design to it. If I want to add the X, I can do that after the fact. To come down the sides of the project, actually while I'm here, we'll add the X. Also back out that DiscDuo, coming out the top right before it, both needles. And we'll start out with our X design. To start out the X design, again, we're using 3 beads to create it. And just want to keep an eye here and pull those threads tight. I'm going to create the X right on top of the DiscDuo by using 3 of my 15s, 1 of my delica, and 3 15s. I put that on with 1 needle, this left-hand needle here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to crisscross right over top of that DiscDuo all the way over to the delica on the opposite corner and pull my thread out. That's going to create that first little crossing motion. With the thread that's on the opposite side, I'm going to add 3 15s. Again, it's just number 3 over and over again. I'm going to crisscross through that delica. So it's always going to appear that with that second needle that you're sewing down, almost sewing backwards. And that's going to make that delica lay correctly. And then 3 more of my 15s and sew through the delica on the opposite side. When I'm done here, I want to make sure everything stays on the top. This first one's just going to be a little bit tricky because the thread wants to pull back into the clasp. So you're going to want to pull tightly and make sure you have no extra thread showing. That's my first little X design sitting right on the DiscDuo. It's going to be the same exact thing the whole way along the length of the bracelet. To get to the outer hole of the RounDuo, again, we're going to use 3 beads, but I'm using the purple color now to get to the outside of the DiscDuo, or the RounDuo, I'm sorry. 3 purple beads get added, and then we're going to pick up and go through the second outer hole as we're working on with it. I'm going to do that on both sides, 1 on the left, and then 1 on the right. When I'm coming out the RounDuo then, I'm also going to add 3 more of the purple color. And then I'm going to sew into the delica beads. So again, the reason that I use the delicas was because we're going to be sewing and catching on those with each pass. As you're going here, again, we're grabbing onto the delica, adding 3 15s right onto my thread, passing through the second outer hole of the RounDuo, 3 15s, and right through the delica bead. I do that on one side, and I'm going to do it on the other side as well. Once I'm through the delica bead, after that pattern, I go in and I do my X pattern again. With 1 needle, this happens to be the left-hand needle, I pick up 3 15s, 1 delica, 3 15s. These are in my bronze color. I'm going to sew to the opposite side of that DiscDuo. So I'm sewing to the next delica bead on the right hand side. I sew through that delica, and that creates the next X. On the right needle now, I'll pick up 3 more of my 15s, sew through the delica in a downward fashion, and that's going to make the delica sit opposite the DiscDuo. 3 more delicas, or I'm sorry, 3 more 15s, and then up through the delica. Once I come out the delica, I'm going to decorate the sides of our RounDuos by adding 3 15s in the purple color through the second hole of that DiscDuo, 3 15s, and through the next delica. That's going to get this side ready to make my X above my next DiscDuo. So it's a very simple pattern of, again, counting to 3 and adding in those 15s right on the sides, as well as the 15s to X over top of the DiscDuos. As you work with this, it'll kind of make it tighter and tighter. It has a very open look to begin with. That's one of the reasons I didn't finish this, was to show you that open look. And we're going to then enhance that by adding some other beads and coming back for another pass. So I'm just going to continue the pattern, creating the X's right on top of the DiscDuos. You always want to make sure that you're on the correct side of those DiscDuos too, because you don't want to do one on one side rather than the other. So you want to make sure that all those X's, when you're looking at your bracelet, are going to sit right on the top of the bracelet, and the back's going to look empty. Continue adding those X's right on top of your DiscDuos and catching the second hole of the RounDuo the whole length of your bracelet, back to the beginning to the starting end. As we move along the bracelet, here's the look that it's going to take. Is when you look at the back of those DiscDuos that I've already gone through, they're nice and empty. And on the front then, we have that nice Xing effect with that bright silver to really make those colors pop. And the purple around the RounDuos really makes the zinc stand out as well. So I'm continuing on, just adding in my X's right along, filling in, and again this is going to expand it a little bit. If you were looking at it as you were getting started and saying that looks long, it does shrink up a tiny bit as you're working on it. I found that out with my example piece, that I had made it so it would be just a little bit big on my wrist, and as I got to the end here it just fits. So I can get it on, but it's a little tight, so that's why I decided to go one more, make it a little bit big, but again, you are having a little bit of that shrinking effect as the DiscDuos pull out, or the RounDuos pull out away from the DiscDuos and out to the side. Continue making your X's right along, and we'll get caught up then when we get to the clasp. So I've gotten the whole length of the bracelet done doing that X design, and what we're going to do now is actually add some of the outer edge here, as well as the bugle beads. So you are going to want to dump out some of your alternate color of your delica beads as well as your bugle beads. I'm going to be done with my purple beads so I can put those away. I'm going to come back down along the edge here, adding 2 more 15s, a delica and a 15, and then do my little ladder stitch here in the middle and adding my bugles between and grouping those RounDuos. If you would want to, this is actually just a really cute little bracelet. You could actually stop here and create that design. It would actually have enough turn and curve that you could do it for a necklace as well if you just wanted a nice open lacy look to it. What I'm going to do is again come back down, add in the outer edges, and then we still have one more pass to come back up the other way. When I'm here at the end, I want to make sure that I'm coming out after my last X here, I'm coming out of my delica bead. So just like if I was getting ready to do my next RounDuo bead, I'm coming out through those delica beads there on the side. I'm going to reinforce my clasp, and I'm going to come back down the other way, coming out again right on those delica beads. So right now, after you're done your X, you want to make sure that your needles are coming out one on each side of the delicas right before the clasp. Again, make little piles too of your new delica color as well as of your bugles. You can put, if you're using the same colors as me, you can put your little purple 15-0 away because we're just going to be using the darker ones as we build along. So to continue here, I'm still going to have to come up and back. I'll tie into the button at the very end rather than go through it now. So I'm going to take my needle that's on the right through the 15 and through the delica there. That crosses at the X point there. And on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing, picking up the other needle, going through the 15, and then also through the delica. Like I said previously, I want my needles to come out right at the same spot. And what I'm going to do is actually go through the base that I added. So I'm going through the 15, the delica, the 15, and also through the DiscDuo. If I can at the same time, that's great. If you can't, you can do it after the fact. It's also going through the 15 there. That's fine because we're going to need to do that eventually. Once I have that through one side, I'm going to do the same thing. And where I actually want to come out is going through the delica bead as well as the 15 and coming right out at the base there. What we're going to be doing is adding our middle section, and in the middle section we have a bugle bead with 15s on each corner. So my thread and my bead are coming out between the 15 and the RounDuo, and the same thing on the other side. I'm going to feed my needle back the whole way through so I can accomplish the same place or get to the same place and feed it the whole way through. Trying not to get your other thread in there. Once I'm through and out the other end, and it's going to be quite simple to make that X pattern. You can see I turned it over to the back. A lot of times that's the easier way to get into the area that you want to, because you don't have the X's and everything going on the top. So when I come here to the center, what I want to do is I want to work on getting my beads in the center with that X formation. To do that X formation with my bugle bead, all I'm going to do is the same thing that I was doing on top of the DiscDuo, except this time I'm just going to go through the same direction of the bugle with the needles. So onto each needle, and I'm working with my right and my left needle. And here on the inside, I'm going to use my purple color. I'm going to use my purple. I decided to use the brighter color instead of the darker. I'm going to use a purple, one on each needle of those 15s. Let those drop down onto your project. Then we're going to pick up a bugle, and the bugle, we're going to share it basically. So one needle is going to go through the bugle from bottom to top. The other one is also going to go from the bottom of the bugle to the top of the bugle. So we're not crisscrossing in any fashion, we're just going through the same direction. When we pull that down next to our middle section, it's going to pull those RounDuo beads in slightly, which is okay because that's the effect that we're going for. And you're just going to pull those in slightly. Add one more 15 on each side. And you're going to sew through the 15 right after the DiscDuo. So we're coming out one on one side. We added our little X here. And we're going to sew in, and we're going to come out of our delica bead. Same thing on the other side. Add my 15 in the purple. Sew through that brown 15, that bronze 15 on the bottom next to the RounDuo, as well as the delica bead. And come out right after. Once I have that, after each section here with the bugle, I just want to give a nice little tug so that way the bugle and the 15s don't leave any extra thread exposed. On the sides then here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bugle, a 15, a bugle, and a 15. I'm doing that with my right needle, and then I'm going to catch the delica and the 15-0 next to the RounDuo on the same side. Pull tight, do the same thing on the other side. 15, bugle, 15, catch the delica at the end of the DiscDuo, as well as that 15, and bring my needle out. When my needle is out, I'm doing that next X formation with my bugle here in the center and a 15 on each side of my needle, a bugle, and then a 15. So I'm going to simply, while I have the needle on, put on a 15, a bugle, and then a 15 on my left needle. Let that drop down next to my project. At the same time, while I have it in my hand, I'm going to sew through the next 15 and the next delica bead. Then I'm going to go over and grab my needle on the right hand side. This is just the way that I do the shortcuts. I work a little bit with one needle at a time. I add a 15 in the purple color, go through that same bugle bead, add another 15 in the purple, through the delica, or through the 15, I'm sorry, and the delica bead on the other side of that same RounDuo bead. Once you're out the delica bead, you're going to do the same pattern that we did on the last one. On the side of the DiscDuo, then you add, on the side of the DiscDuo, you're just going to add your 15 in the bronze color, and then, or I'm sorry, the 15 in that jet bronze, the bugle, and the 15. You're going to continue that up the whole way, creating that little center X with the bugles, and then adding the bugles on the side. So I've gone the whole way down here now, adding a little bit of that brightness with the 15 O's Xing in the middle, and then the bugles kind of catching on the sides of those DiscDuos. It will have a little bit of an effect that it's going to dome a tiny bit just because of the fit. What we're going to do now is actually spread it out and pull it so it lays nice and flat. Every step of the way, this bracelet, it has a really pretty look. At this point here, if I would want to, I could be finished with the bracelet, but we're going to go in and do some ladder stitch here on the sides and add another bugle in, and also decorate the sides of our RounDuo beads that we're working on. So to do that, I'm coming out the very end here, and I've added my last little bugle X in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go into the bracelet here and up and do a little peyote stitch at the end to decorate the bracelet end. To do that, I'm going to go through my beads here, coming out my 15. I'm going to go through my DiscDuo, coming out the other side. If you can at that same time, grab onto the first 15. If you can't, not a big deal. When you're coming out the 15 there on the edge, you're going to go right around the edge picking up your beads. I'm going to pick up the purple color of my 15s. So I'm going to add a 15, skip that first bead, and go through the second bead. The next area right here, I'm going to add 2 of my 15s, skip and sew through again. Next, I'm going to add 1 and vice versa. So I'm going to constantly be adding 1, then 2, then 1, then 2. I'll put my needle back on there. So there's my 1, then my 2, then my 1. If you want, you could do a designed pattern that you could do both colors of your 15s and work with those. It's kind of up to you. The reason I'm doing this 2-1 pattern is because naturally, since it's on the outside of the existing ring of delicas, it needs to be bigger. Because the delica bead is bigger than the 15s, I'm making up for some of that space by alternating the 1-2 pattern. This also is reinforcing this loop by putting another thread pass through. So originally I had 2 thread passes through. and we're adding a third one through every other delica bead. Not only is this decorating the end, but it also has a functionality to it too. So I'm going to continue around adding that 2-1 pattern right around with the delicas and the 15s. When I come out the other side, I want my needle to exit at the very top of my RounDuo bead. So I'm going to come down the side here, cross over after I'm done, come up the DiscDuo, cross over through the 15 or the delica and up the 15s. Each needle I want to come out right here at the top of this RounDuo bead, ready to add my fringe. Once I'm coming out those beads here on the ends, what I'm going to do is do the same thing on the right side as I do on the left. So I'm coming out those 3 beads. One option I have is to connect and do a little bit of a ladder stitch. I've been rethinking this a little bit, but it's going to start out the exact same way. That what we're going to do first is we're going to add some 15s, 2 15s, an 11, and 2 15s, and I'm going to sew into the last bead, or the first bead rather, of the 15-0 on the opposite side of the RounDuo bead. That's going to decorate the side. Every time I get to a RounDuo bead, I'm going to have 2 15s and delica, 2 15s, and I'm always going to catch that outer edge of my RounDuo. When I come on the side here, if I would want to do that ladder stitch method and add those beads into place, I'm going to add 2 15s and my bugle bead. Sew down the bugle bead. That's already there. And then I'm going to sew up in a ladder fashion the bugle bead that I just added. Add 2 more of my 15s, sew through, and start that pattern over. That's going to get that same pattern as I used in the example. As I was thinking about this and taking just a little break, I decided that this is another method, and I think I'm going to do this on this whole bracelet just to show you the variance. I think it would be pretty if they sit separated a little bit. So on this one here, I'm going to use 1 15, 2 bugles right in a row, and then another 15. If you have a 6mm bugle in the same color, you could also use that at this point. So I have 1 15, 2 of my bugles, and 1 15 on my needle. I'm then going to sew into the last purple 15 next to the top of the RounDuo. Decorate that top of the RounDuo with those 5 beads, the 2 15s and the 1 delica and then the 2 15s. Sew through the first purple on the other side of the delica, and then continue with that pattern of the 1 15, 2 bugles, 1 15, and into the next purple bead to shape the sides of my RounDuos here. So it's 2 different variations on the same bracelet, just using a little bit different on the edge. I like the separation a little bit there of the bugles. Honestly, if I had a 6mm bugle rather than the 2 3s, they work, they're the same measurement, but it would be more of a continuous line that you could do. Or you can do the ladder stitch and link in. You could do every other, it's kind of a preference. Actually, since I already have that one there, I'll do every other as I continue the bracelet, linking in 1 ladder and then doing 2 bugles, 1 ladder, 2 bugles. So you can alternate. You could add in here on the edge a 1 6mm bugle. You could do all 15s. It's kind of up to you. You just need to figure out your spacing between those RounDuos and the spacing to make up for the DiscDuos. So I'm going to do one where I do those 2 beads, bugle, back through the previous bugle, and then add 2 15s. Do your little rounded edge here on your RounDuo. Then I'm going to do the next one, 1 15, 2 bugles, 15, rounded edge on the bugle. I'll take this one off here and go back and do another one where I link in. So it's going to have an every other effect as I work on the bracelet. Once I do the right side, I'm going to do the same thing continuously on the left side. Once you come back up to the end of the bracelet, all I did was come up the sides, and I did alternate doing the 2 bugles in a row and then the 1 linking in. So the first example that I did that whole ladder stitch all the way down. This one I alternated between the ladder stitch and the bugles. So it just makes it for a little bit fun, different pattern going the whole way, mimicking each side to one another. Then when I got to the end, all I had to do was get my 2 threads to the same point and tie off. When I do tie off, I burn also, creating a little bit of a stop bead action here, creating a little blunt end, and I made sure that that was on the back of my bracelet so you won't see it at all. And it just has that fun, funky look to it with those new beads and those DiscDuo beads. It's also somewhat of a reversible bracelet. If you don't want to see a lot of those X's going on, you can turn it the opposite way, and you can see more of that laddering effect with the bugles. So you could wear it whichever way you want, whether or not you want to wear it so you see the X's, or whether or not you want to wear it to see the bugles. Pretty either way. Again, you can also kind of stop this bracelet anywhere in the design and create your own version, whether or not it's just at the very beginning, stopping with just the X, stopping with just the bugles on the outside. So have fun with this. It's great to pick up 2 needles at once, play around, just see what you make. Again, if you need any of these materials, you can go back to the beginning of the video, check that out. We'll be happy to send you some of these materials. You can also print out the list to take to your local Potomac Bead Company store, and we're happy to help you out that way too. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. If you want to stay tuned and stay connected, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel, as well as interact with us on Facebook and tell us what you like, what you'd like to see, give us ideas and suggestions. We're always happy to hear them. Thanks a lot and have fun, everyone.